There's a number of questions here in the chat. So
Sure.
if anyone else in the call wants to jump in, please do. But I'm going to start asking a couple of these because I'm really interested to see what you might answer. And I'll just go down in order. So the first one is, because you mentioned divine intelligence, and they're wondering, is divine intelligence personal or apersonal?
I would say it's apersonal. Divine intelligence is one way of describing intelligence, but just from the perspective of God, from the perspective of the universe, the supreme, the creator. This is the challenge when it comes to trying to explain this force of nature. It's that you cannot describe it because it's incomprehensible in a way, right? But when we're talking about the brain and the brain's ability to raise its intelligence, divine intelligence is how I would describe that in alignment with how we understand God to be. So I guess you would say that it is both personal and apersonal, perhaps.
Yeah, probably a bit of, because we each have our own personal version or relationship,
right? Absolutely.
To that kind of apersonal thing.
Sure.
Yeah. So the next one here is speaking more about the Earth. Is Earth an entity as in personal, or geography as in a place? And does that question even matter in terms of?
That's an awesome question. Yeah, I believe that everything has consciousness, right? I think it comes down to human ignorance to think that an animal, for example, doesn't have a certain intelligence, doesn't have a consciousness. A rock doesn't have a consciousness. How do we know? In my personal experience is that the Earth does have its own consciousness, which can be also communicated to. It's just a matter of being aware of the fact that the Earth itself is alive. And also how we receive the way that it communicates to us, because perhaps it doesn't communicate to us in the way that a human to human communication occurs. So yeah, I definitely do think that the planet has its own consciousness for sure.
I think it's a great way to think about it, and to be open to hearing or seeing in new ways. And we find all the time that whether it's our pets or our plants even, that they respond to light and water and touch and speaking, and emotions. They've even had those the pictures of water that responds to different kind of emotions, and they'll take pictures of it, and you can see because water is made up of the same things that everything else is made up, and it responds emotionally to these things, so therefore it must be alive. And it's also struck me when you were talking about the Earth being alive, and you mentioned a rock, which I think most people would say, okay, a tree, it grows, but mountains are constantly shifting and moving and expanding and contracting. Some of them below their tops, like volcanoes, and they change their shape and size. And so I would also say that is maybe a shift of consciousness as well, like you said about communication, to think, maybe I have a belief that these things are or are not alive, or do not have consciousness, but maybe if I can shift that, kind of like our eyes, you can't see certain things, but if you put certain lenses on, then you can. And they were there the whole time. You just you weren't aware of it because you couldn't see it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like this is something that I've contemplated a lot, is, the human body is designed in such a way that it's only able to receive certain stimuli, certain information. What if there is more in our reality that we can't see because our bodies are not capable to process that information?
Yeah.
And is there a way for us to evolve to a point where we might be able to receive that information? I think there might be.
Yeah. I always laugh. You see people every day, they're out walking their dogs and they're just walking along blissfully, not paying attention. And the dog is just furiously sniffing everything in their path, and they'll stop and just like hover over something because
Yes, yeah,
they're getting all this information.
yeah,
And the owner is just like, what are you doing? Because the owner doesn't understand.
right.
They can't see it because we don't have the same sense of smell. So to us, it's just, oh, leave that alone.
Yeah, 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 that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, things like that. Okay, so moving on to the next one. Is it necessary to derive self-worth to improve self-confidence? Or can we have worth that is located outside of ourselves, but still be confident?
No, the confidence has to come from within oneself. That what that means is, you know, understanding that you're a soul in a body. Who we actually all are, and again, this is just my interpretation, my truth, right? But how I experience this world and how I believe it to be is that, you know, this body, all of this is just it's a manifestation of energy in a physical form, but we get to be the driver of this reality through our consciousness, through this sense of knowing that I exist inside me. There's this sense of knowing inside all of us that we know ourselves to exist. It's filled with memories and experiences and thoughts and emotions, all of that. But even behind that is this knowing that I exist, right? And it's not to say, even though all of us are that same energy, each of us are also individual too. Like it's like our soul, which is what I'm describing here. Our soul has its individual characteristics, as well as being one and the same as everyone. The soul is so incredible, the design of the universe. But it's this driver, this person that gets to see through these eyes like I'm watching a movie, right? But the movie is this right here. This, what we're experiencing right now, is the movie, and we're watching through this body. Yeah, so I think I'm not sure if I answered the question there directly, but
it's funny. Some of the things you say, they really resonate, because when I went through coaching school, there were a lot of this sense of mindfulness. And one of the things they talked about is not so much in a spiritual sense, but they refer to our kind of bodies as almost like spacesuits. You know, it's like we're just we're just in these suits, and we're doing all these things. But our mindfulness, our awareness, our presence, our alignment, all of that stuff is the real us inside.
You're right.
Yeah. So a lot of parallels through different words.
Yeah, for sure.
Can I ask something?
Yeah, please.
Can you guys hear me? Let me just make sure. Good evening. I logged on late, obviously, and nice to meet your speaker. I was listening for a while, and I am intrigued by I saw your presentation for the program, and I'm intrigued by your perspective with regards to being and just one sense of existence and how they really go about amplifying that to really get to where they really want to be, whether that's in a physical or resource sense, whether that's spiritually. So my question to you, what I'm really getting to is that I saw in your presentation, I saw a quote from Krishna, I think.
Correct.
So
yes.
I didn't catch all of it. So forgive me if I missed something here.
Sure.
But in your professional opinion, what do you believe is the best manifestation of the subconscious? Because from various religious texts, they call it something else. we all know what the law of attraction is and how that works, or how it's put forth. But from your experience, what is your take on that?
Exploring the limitations or the conditioning of your family upbringing, and making peace with that, whatever that is, because the truth is everyone experiences familial trauma. You know, we're born into circumstances, family dynamics, their life lessons. We also share the same lessons on the planet, but individually also in our families, we experience these lessons, and we have to, they're there as a tool for us to discover ourselves as a universe. Once you start to see everything in your life as a gift, that's when you open up. You could say it's like opening up a portal inside of yourself. Find that one thing that really upsets you in your life, and find a way to love that unconditionally, like genuinely love it, you know, to a point where you're not having any resentment or any of the sort, or any judgment towards it, but you just genuinely like love the crap out of that. And that's what it is. I mean, if you take the example of say Jesus, right? Classic example of him is that he was a man that was historically depicted as someone who was abused by humanity, right, for speaking his truth. And as the interpretation of his story goes, is that he embraced it. Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do, is his expression of unconditional love. That he not only, he doesn't just say that, he actually understands the mechanics of why that would be true, is that they don't know what they're doing because they don't know that they're the universe. So he's able to go to a place where he understands that you know, everyone's the universe, and they don't know that they're the universe. And if they did, you know, maybe I need to be the leader, and I need to show them what's possible. And sometimes to do that means you need to take the arrows, you know. So yeah, so there are deep wounds in all of us, right? But those wounds are actually the gold. The wounds is actually what causes expansion, but unfortunately, it's not always pretty. I hope that that helps, that answer.
Yes, it does.
Okay, great.
I feel like that was very profound. And I started thinking about when you said family history, of like lineage, and how there are certain propensities or beliefs, or even just the DNA. You know, there are certain diseases or predilections, or, you know, all kinds of things that can just be hereditary, beyond the social structure, or the plight of certain people from different
Absolutely.
regions. Just even the belief patterns of a family that is raised in a certain culture or belief system, religion, what have you, it's going to, especially if it's intergenerational, have a lot of weight or literal history to it.
That's what makes this also fascinating, because yeah, it's not just family trauma. It's actually, you know, like if you take your ancestral tree, like it goes all the way back to the beginning of time. You know, you could literally do that. You could trace your, you know, you look back, who were my grandparents, who are their parents, and who are they, you know, there's a parent for every parent. So you would, you know, and ultimately, yeah, you would find that. So yeah, And that's, that's why I believe we're all here on the planet. It's not like a coincidence, like we're doing something here. Yeah.
Yeah, very well said. You mentioned a couple quotes, and I forget exactly what you said, but there's a question here I think is relating to them. It says, what qualifies wisdom as timeless?
That's my qualification. That's not necessarily the general consensus. But yeah, I would say that if it speaks truth, there's certain things that has a resonance to it. It's incorruptible. So, like the Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita has a lot of texts that does, like, you could literally read even the Bible, you read even the Quran, you read a sentence and it holds a vibrational frequency to it. Hard to describe. It's just an innate knowing that this is the truth,
So moving on to a thought on suffering. Does suffering serve a purpose, or do you believe it is simply the result of a lack of alignment?
Suffering for me is not knowing that you're the divine creator, which is, I would say, is the divine creator suffers, right? It suffers because, in a sense, it's like the father being alienated from his children. If a child doesn't know who their father is, if the child doesn't know who their father is, then that's hurtful for the father as well. But it's just the way that, like if we don't have a negative to a positive, how do we know what the positive is? If we don't have suffering, how do we know that we're empowered and we're creators? It's just the design of the way that life is, or the world that we're experiencing. That's what makes it colorful. It's not always pretty. There's some heinous things that are happening in the world, and God doesn't have any predisposition, in my view, doesn't have any predisposition for that. He holds it all, and perhaps he also suffers, just as we suffer, because we are God.
I think that analogy of the child or the parent not knowing each other, it's the same, because parents quite often, it's that free will. It's letting the children decide to make mistakes.
Yeah.
And, there's that famous expression, the parents was like, this is going to hurt you more than it hurts me, or hurt me more than it hurts you. They suffer through the suffering of others. To watch that and know this is how they will learn. This is how they will grow. They can only pick themselves up if they've fallen. And I need to let that happen, but I suffer by letting it happen.
Yeah, 100%.
So I want to make sure we get these last couple of questions in. Would you agree people are always in motion, whether it's a positive or a negative motion?
I think there's an emotion that's neutral. So that would be, for me, is the state of awareness. It's like I'm experiencing all of these things, but I'm just watching them like clouds in the sky. I'm just being with whatever's, whatever tides are flowing around me. I'm just being present. And that is an emotional state.
So to piggyback on the positive or negative there, what defines what is positive and what is negative?
That's open to interpretation. Positive for me is feeling expansive. So that could be excitement, joy, motivation, drive, gratitude, appreciation. And negative is when you feel repressed. You almost feel like you're closed in, feels like you're trapped. It's resistance. And that would show up in, like envy, jealousy, greed, anger, vengeance, you know, all of those nasty emotions, lust, you know, all of that actually, it makes you to feel like you're trapped, right? It's an illusion. We think we want these things, but internally actually causes us to feel like crap. And that's what it is. It's the mind thinks one thing, but the body and the heart knows more. And the challenge is to overcome the mind and go, no, actually, I want to feel grateful. I want to love. I want to understand. I want to, you know, humiliate myself in this moment. And that's where the love is. That's where that positivity, in a sense, may be.
I think that's very wise. I use a lot of embodiment in my coaching, and I'll ask people that are struggling with certain things, you know, what does that feel like? And quite often there is such a disconnect between the logic thing that they know and the physical feeling that they have in the body. So yeah, I think your explanation of what the negative and the positive feel like is a great way to tap into that.
It's a condition of the world, my friend.
So we're down to the last few questions. This one asks, how am I connected to everything if I see myself as an individual who is separate and distinct? And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm curious to see what you would say to that.
I guess I would say, don't think about it. It's actually the thought in itself that separates you from the experience. You ever notice that when your brain just thinks, could it be this or that or whatever it might be, then you're missing the experience in the moment. It's actually, it's almost like a trick, you know, tricking your mind, because the mind loves to think. We're addicted to thinking. So yeah, that's why you look at a lot of sages, a lot of gurus. They'll talk about being present, being in the moment. Don't indulge in thought. Be the observer. Meditate. Really, meditation in itself is a practice that develops the brain, the body to be present and to have a strong connection to that presence, so that it can be more stronger than the tide of thoughts and emotions that come your way, that life throws at you. Hope that was helpful.
Yeah, I also think it's really helpful because of what you said, which is it's practice. It's the coming back to it. It's the constant choice.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is more important, intent or result?
Intent. Results come as a byproduct always from the intent.
Let's write that down. That's great. So to piggyback on result, if the intention is to create a certain result, but the action creates a different result or an opposite result, what does that mean, if anything?
Could you repeat that question again?
If the intention is to create one result, but your action actually creates a different result, or maybe the opposite,
yeah,
what does that mean, if anything?
It means that you're judging the situation because you don't know it. Whatever might be happening in your life could be completely different to what you expect it to be. So it's a matter of actually trusting in your intention and being resilient with that intention. If you are so firmly ingrained in your intent, right? And I mentioned this in the presentation, that your intention, which is in alignment with the universe, is service. You know, how do I serve? How do I make this moment, this situation, this conversation, how do I make my life to be beneficial for others, not taking from others, but how do I give more? if your intent is that, then the results don't even matter actually, right? But you can mold that intention towards a direction, but still let go of what that looks like. Just enjoy the ride. And that, you know, you would rather have it that way anyway, because if you knew every step of the way how things were going to pan out, life would be so boring. Perfect design of the universe.
So I'm hearing a little bit of like letting go of a predetermined outcome,
Right.
and instead going in with maybe like an open heart and saying, you know, I'm going to let my intention lead the way.
Right. But that doesn't mean you don't set goals and, you know, go after them. It's just, it's a matter of actually setting them and letting go of the outcome.
So we're down to the last few minutes. So let me see if I can get these last question or two in.
Could I just pause for a moment? I badly need to go to the bathroom.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Go right ahead and then we'll wrap up. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Thank you.
So while he's stepping away, Craig or Ben, let me know if you each have like one last question, and then we'll wrap up and do the outro because we're almost at time. And we have like, there's 4 questions here. So if you have one, if you could ask one last question each, what would it be? And either feel free to ask Dr. Phil directly, or you can throw it in the chat.
I will go first.
And Craig, it's great to see you. I mean, I can't see you, but it's great to have you back. It's been a while.
Yep, it's been a while. Yeah. My question would be, with all of what I've heard and with the actual existential and spiritual basis of the presentation, and you kind of touched on it with the last question, because outcome and goals, typically such fields contradict the fact that, and I don't even think contradict is the right word, but it typically opposes having really big goals and really being very result driven. And the question I have for him is, in the event that you really fall flat on your face, in that you set a big outcome and you really don't achieve it, and in most people's eyes you would have failed, right? Generally, how do you move on from that? And yes, we know that you could reinterpret the actual failure, but sometimes, for example, let's say you miss out on the Olympics, right? Something that grand. And to make it more common to the average person, because none of us here are Olympians, let's say that you had a major tragedy in your business and you end up going out of business. How does one interpret and move on from such horrible things? You know the saying that bad things happen to very good people, whether those people are priests, ordinary people, philanthropists. So generally, I'm interested in his perspective as to how to move off when really bad things happen. And that's long and winded.
Yeah, that's great. I'll invite you to ask him directly if you want, but I did write that down, and I can run that past him when he comes back. It's great. We can actually Ben just sent a quick message in the back. He's like, "Wow, I can hear Craig so much better. He must have gotten a new microphone." So you're coming in very, very crisp and clear.
I just realized I was muted. Well, yes, I do have a new microphone. Yeah. So
Ben, I see you have like 4 more questions there in the chat. Did you have one that you want me to ask more than any of the others?
Back, guys. Thank you. When nature calls, it calls.
Yeah, no worries. Well, we're going to go a little long, but we did start about 10 minutes late. So I guess technically we're still on time.
Awesome.
Craig, did you want to ask that directly, or do you want me to just
Well, it was a bit long-winded, but I will try, and then you'll fill in if I leave out anything. But my question was around the fact that the conversation is a very existential one, and our presentation is really towards a spiritual nature, and that's good because most of the Western world, especially, neglects that part of themselves,
Sure.
right? My question is around major adversities, and let's say
So,
that one
adversities?
really
Okay.
adversities, like
Yep.
really bad things that happen.
Right.
So
Right.
let's say if one really fails at a major particular ideal. So let's say, for example, I use the example of the Olympics. Let's say if an athlete has been trained for a lot of years and they miss the Olympics, or they end up being disabled, but something really bad. And to make it more relatable to the average person, because most people are not athletes or Olympians, let's say you have a major business tragedy. And yes, one may say that when one fails, if we want to use that word, I know I did, that you could simply reframe the thought and move on.
Right.
But typically, for something very calamitous that throws most people off, what is your perspective for how to move on from such an occurrence? And that could also be the loss of a major person in your life, and
Yeah.
something. I mean, we always have those bad moments. And one saying that I have
Sure.
is that typically the most tested moments are those that hit us when you're not watching.
Yeah. So this is going to get a little bit more existential, and this is just my my truth on this, right? But if you limit yourself to even this lifetime as well, you would also manifest failure. Because, the way that I see my life is that I'm not just here in this life. I've been here in other lifetimes, and what's the most amount of things that I can do in this lifetime that can benefit the planet and the universe before I leave the body, because I know that I continuously exist, and in whichever way that I decide to come back, whether it's here or wherever it might be, maybe then I'll get another chance that time, right? But it's the human condition that we identify ourselves as being limited by the human body and this life, and it's also the fear of the unknown. We don't know what happens after we leave our bodies. That's also a source of the failure. That's not to say that, not to ignore or disregard what you mentioned about, when somebody goes through an immense failure or a trauma such as that, like a life-changing trauma. But there are other things to do with that as well. There's things such as karma, which is, understanding that we as this consciousness, this soul, we go into lifetimes, and the objective is to experience what it is that we can experience in this planet or in a planet, and or whatever it might be, and learn from that experience. And if we haven't found our way back to discovering that we're the universe, then we come back again and we repeat the lesson. And if we get it better the second time around, perhaps the lesson is to take it more gracefully. Some people become really resentful. This didn't work out. This failed. Well, how can I learn to love this as well? Because me as a universe, I'm not making this thing to be, being the most important thing. It's just a circumstance It's just a material thing. And I, as a universe, am immaterial. I am everything. So I'm not going to limit myself to this event. And getting oneself to that place might, bring some more positive or a higher level of karma that would be beneficial for you carrying on into the next life. So that's like that's going deep down into the rabbit hole. It might be a bit too much for people, but if you really want to go down, to investigate why certain things happen, that's my understanding, is it actually comes down to the experiences that we've accumulated throughout lifetimes, because we're eternal beings in truth. There's no such thing as death.
I don't know if anyone has any comments on that, but I think that's an amazing place to end the discussion. I think it's a expansive and also kind of all-encompassing way to kind of end, because we've talked about so many different aspects of this, and I really love the idea of leaving the thought of our consciousness and our energy and our life open, and also leaving the thought of like this conversation being open. Like I'm picturing everyone ending the call or ending the recording and continuing to think about it afterwards. And so I love that thought, and I like ending on that thought. But I do want you to ensure everybody knows where to find you, how to contact you, how to reach out, and how to get more information for the course. I'll put the links to everything in the show notes, but where would you like people to find you or to connect with you?
Yeah, you can connect with me on Facebook, Maitreya Philip, on Instagram, Maitreya Philip, and through PonaQuest. Yeah, and I'd be honored, and I would love to connect with you, because we're here for a pretty big mission. We're here for a purpose, all of us, and we're all one big family. So yeah, please reach out to me, and I would love to connect with you and find out what's going on in your world, and share my experience with you too.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Philip Alexander, aka Maitreya. Did I say that right? Maitreya?
You did, yeah.
It's still new for me since I know you as Dr. Phil. So thank you so much for being here. As I said, I thought it was a wide-ranging, but also very consistent. I think there's a great thread through all those different aspects. I'm sure everyone will get a lot out of it. To remind everyone, we have these talks on the first and third Thursday of every month. And if you join our mailing list, which you can contact me at shanebors@gmail.com to get on that. You can find out who our upcoming speakers are, or you can come on as a speaker yourself. Being live in the call is a great way to not only speak directly to whoever the expert is, but to get your questions answered. Of course, you can always join our list and get the rebroadcast in the show notes. So either way, it gives you an opportunity to learn and connect with other people that we have in our community. So Dr. Phil, thank you again for being here. I wish you lots of success on your upcoming album and your new class. And I'm so glad that we have reconnected, because it's been far too long.
Yeah, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, lots of love.
Good night, everyone. Thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you on the next call.